this is the domain. For this point, we have a vertex of negative 0.5. I want to figure out what is the y value of the vertex. So I'm going to go back to this function. I transform function f into function g, and I'm going to write down 2 parentheses, negative 1/2 times negative 1/2 plus 18 times negative 1/2 minus 5. Now with the calculator, this would be much easier, but remember, half of your test you can't use a calculator with. So negative times a negative is a positive, 2 times 2 is 4. Negative 1 times 18 is negative 18 over 2 minus 5. Okay, so negative 18 over 4, well, they're both even, so I'm going to divide those by 2. And I get divided by 2 is 9, divided by 4 divided by 2 is 2. And although I can simplify this, I'm going to make this easier. I'm going to put this over 1. I'm going to take this times 2 and times 2, so I have a common denominator. Okay, so common denominator is 2. 9 minus 18 is negative 9. Negative 9 and negative 10 is negative 19. Negative 19. So this is the correct y